Founded in 1960 to join together black college students for the cause of lunch counter segregation, SNCC worked throughout the 1960s, continuing its lunch counter sit-in protests and freedom rides, freedom marches, and working towards black voter registration. SNCC also established freedom schools and organized a famous mock election, and played a major role in the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Though the organization was short-lived and eventually dissolved due to conflicting opinions within, it helped to bring African Americans to their goal of freedom.
On May 4th, 1961, the first freedom ride took place. 7 blacks and 6 whites headed out from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans. These people called themselves Freedom Riders. These people would stop in states where Jim Crow laws were very present and would participate in nonviolent protest. In many situations, the black riders would use the white facilities and the white riders would use the black facilities. The Freedom Riders didn't face violence for a while, but then they reached Alabama, and there was a mob that tried to harm the riders. This made their job more difficult, but in the end, they made a lot of progress. Sit-ins were practiced in the 60s. They started in colleges where black students wanted to be served, but were refused. The black students would wait in line to be served in the white lines, and would not leave until the line closed. They would not eat the food, and everyone would just sit there waiting till they got served. This then carried on to other industries and places, and blacks everywhere would sit down and wait until they were spoken to and heard. Dr. Martin Luther King was the first to take people from all over the country to protest against civil rights in the 50s and 60s. People marched on the White House, hundreds of thousands strong, to get press coverage. There would be speeches, and it got a lot of recognition. It was all over the news.
In 1963, SNCC hosted an election called the Freedom Vote. This mock election served to show the public that blacks had an interest in voting and would do so if given the chance. At this mock election, 4 times more than the number of registered black voters showed up to vote. The election showed the willingness of black Mississippians to vote after being denied the right for so long. Though the 14th Amendment gave blacks the right to vote, and the 15th Amendment stated that one could not be denied the right to vote based on race, blacks were frequently disenfranchised. Through this experiment, they showed their eagerness to pursue their rights.
White people from the North came to the South in order to convince black people on farms to vote. This was very important in order for civil rights activists to gain power in the government. At the time, the government officials didn't really support the civil rights movement, and the activists were trying to change this by getting minorities to go and vote. It was in the 50s and 60s mostly, and it really helped to gain power with the civil rights activists.
Tragedy hit SNCC after Mississippi Summer, an event where the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was established to win votes in the 1964 Democratic National Convention in order to help blacks who were being prevented from voting. During this time, some of the people that were working on this project were arrested. Once these 3 men were released from prison, they were lynched, and their bodies were eventually found after pressure from the FBI. Later, many other bodies of black Mississippians were found. The people were so dedicated that they ended up giving their lives for fighting the cause of black disenfranchisement.
Freedom schools were established in the 60s and 70s in order for the black people, mostly in the South, to be trained for working towards civil rights. These schools also taught blacks the reason for political empowerment and why it was so important, and how to achieve it. These schools taught activists how to rebel in non-violent ways. The schools also encouraged interracial activities for young children. The main goal of these projects were to unite the American people.
Towards the end of the 1960s, SNCC had split into 2 factions. One group supported the original motives and ways. They promoted nonviolence, integration-oriented activities, and restoration of grievances to the political system. The second group diverged from the initial ideas of the organization, favoring radical and revolutionary ideas and black power. This change could be seen when SNCC changed its name from Student Nonviolent to Student National, taking away the nonviolent emphasis. By the 1970s, SNCC had all but disintegrated. SNCC helped to make the black community more empowered, more educated, and more important in the daily lives of Americans. With its marches, schools, mock elections, and structured bus protests, all under the name of freedom, SNCC helped to bring more attention to the African American cause and to motivate more blacks to join in the fight for rights. Its sit-in protests and schools, voter registrations, and slogans added to the decade in which great improvements were made to civil rights in America. Though SNCC did not last long, it made a profound impact on the civil rights struggle of Black Americans.